This is the Grow Your Clinic podcast from Clinic Mastery. We help progressive health professionals to lead inspired teams, transform client experiences, and build clinics for good. Now, it's time to grow your clinic.
G'day and welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast. My name is Jack O'Brien, your host, and we are back in the saddle for another episode. It just feels like the episodes are getting better and better, or at least from this side of the microphone. And from the feedback that we've been getting from you guys, our listeners, it's feeling very similar. I actually love to quickly share, before we introduce our guest today, who I'm really excited to have join us, I'm just going to share a quick comment that we received on our podcast recently. Says, what an incredible podcast. Previously, I saw self-care as self-indulgence, and now the total opposite. Self-care equals better, healthy professional. And that was in reference to our episode with Dr. Jonathan Ramachandra a couple of episodes ago. Firstly, we really appreciate you sharing your comments. It's really warming to us. And would love that you're open-minded and abundant enough to go, great, we can swap our perspectives on self-care. And it's no longer about self-indulgence, but about being a better health professional and about being a better healthy professional as well. And what a segue. It leads us to today's episode and today's guest. I'm really excited to have with us, for your listening pleasure, Natasha Ace from the Private Practice Alliance. Natasha, how are you going?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. And I think we'll be able to touch on some self-care and resilience elements as we get going. But before we dive directly into the podcast, so that listeners get to know you a little bit and we get a bit of an insight into who Tash really is, I've got a couple of rapid fire icebreaker questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead.
Awesome. Okay, number one, what are you reading or learning right now?
I actually just finished a book called Symptoms of Being Human by Jeff Garvin, and it's a fiction about gender fluid. It's the main character is just unraveling about being gender fluid, and I think it was just brilliantly written, and loved it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah, it's great.
Number two, who inspires you?
My parents. I have to say, well, my dad's just been diagnosed with a really rare cancer, and his resilience has been phenomenal, and my mom's support of that, and just to be able to be married for such a long time and still really love and enjoy the human that you're spending your time with. Yeah. I just, you can only ever hope to aspire to that.
Yeah, wow. That's awesome. Do you get to see them in the flesh much these days?
Almost every year I fly back for a period of time and spend some time there, but it's short trips. You can only spend so much time with your family, and it's never a holiday. No, I keep them when I fly back. People are like, oh, you're going on a holiday. No, I'm visiting family. It's not the same.
Yeah, it's funny. It's not a holiday. It's an adventure, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's like Christmas time when people stress about the holidays. I get that all the time.
Mm-hmm. So do you go back in the northern winter or summer?
Summer. I think I'm from basically New York, so it snows and cold, and I actually don't have the garments to wear anymore.
Sure.
For snow. So it's spring, summer kind of thing. Yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of your parents and childhood, what did you want to be growing up?
I wanted to be a lawyer.
Really?
So, yes, I could argue and debate with my parents like no other. And so my dad used to say to me, you need to be a lawyer. This is a healthy way to do this.
Right.
And then I grew up and realized what being a lawyer meant. And but no, thanks. Not interested.
No, I could see that. You'd make a great Erin Brockovich.
Yeah, that's right. Standing up for those who need it.
When did you realize that you didn't want to be a lawyer?
I actually went to uni for criminal justice to start my undergrad, and I get so much test anxiety that I would go through the semester, and then when it was exam times, I just bomb the exams. Right. And so at that point, it was like, uni's really not for me, full stop. I ended up dropping out because I couldn't learn the same way they mainstream people into learning. So, or just I couldn't articulate that on the exams. So.
Sure.
Yeah, it wasn't
there you go. And number 4, final question. What's a motto you live by?
I love this question. So thank you for asking it. It's Demethius I never pronounce his name right. It's Demetheus. It's not correct. It's a Greek.
Sounds Greek.
Yeah, it's a great guy. He wrote, nothing is easier than self-deceit, for what one man wishes, that he also believes to be true. And it's always a good reminder that when you're only seeing what you want to see, you'll always see what you want to see. Right. And, just stay in awe, stay curious, just really what else is out there. Always question your boundaries, always question sort of your own beliefs and your own comfort zones. And so I've loved that ever since I first heard it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I love it. That's a lovely insight into you and your style and your personality, but take us all the way back. So you mentioned study. What was your early career? What did it look like?
Yeah. So early career is I started before the podcast, we were kind of talking about my life. And I started my career working quite young, right out of high school, and then going into uni, but then dropping out fairly early because, the exams and things, and just bombing them. So I met a clinical psychologist when I was about, I just turned 18 and started working with him. And he really mentored me and developed, the skill sets that I had. And so I worked with him for quite a few years. And then I ended up starting my own business, my first business, consulting in private practices and helping clinicians start private practice. And it wasn't just psychologists initially. Like when you start out and you're that young, I was 21 when I started my first business. Wow. You kind of, very, very young. You don't know, there's a lot to learn at 21. You don't really kind of question failure at that age, I don't think. And so, I started consulting under his mentorship and under his wife's mentorship, and just really kind of went from there. And then you just sort of see everyone. You kind of just work with everyone, and you're just scared. You do have that sort of that scare. How am I going to get work? You're reliant on yourself, those types of things. And then I actually started my own private practice when I was 22. Wow. And so, from there I thought, what I'll do is I'll do the administration and the marketing and all of that, and I'll bring on a clinician and I'll have them work for me, do billable hours, sort of a passive income. And then that would free me up to pick and choose who I can consult with. And then in 6 months, that business just exploded. We had 11 contractors, 3 administration team members. It was just massive. And within the first year, I was like, okay, what next? Right. Good fortune and really great people and clinicians that worked with me. They were just amazing. So
it's fascinating, Tash. If I can pull on a couple of threads through that story, how did you find being young? So I think I'm thinking of listeners here who might be maybe young in age or even just young in their clinic ownership journey. How did you handle that?
Yeah, well, it wasn't just being young, Jack. I mean, firstly, I was young with no degree and not a clinician myself. And so I'm going out there and getting clinicians to work for me, essentially, at, early 20s. Most of them were double my age, because by the time you move into private practice in the States, it's not until your late 30s, early 40s that you kind of get into private practice. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people, there are always going to be naysayers. There are always going to be people that say you can't work in this space, and they're always going to have a reason. But, when you get the right people, I mean, one of my clinical directors was a graduate from Harvard,
Wow, yeah.
And so he would come in and have conversations, and again, sort of treating people equal, like everyone has something to contribute. And if you're in a space where people aren't taking you seriously, go and surround yourself with new people.
That's right. Take responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Like those aren't your people. They're not your people. And if you're an older person and you're not seeing that value, or you've been in this space for a really long time and you're not seeing the value that a younger clinician or a younger human has to offer, I suggest you go and get a younger mentor. Find someone who's going to push your comfort zones about technology or even your clinical skill sets, and let them mentor you in a different way. It's just, you've got to surround yourself with the right people.
There's two key lessons I pick up from that for those playing along at home. Maybe if you're taking notes, that, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, or you don't have to be the guru. You weren't even a clinician. And I say that with all respect, right?
Yeah.
And I think I personally struggled with a similar thing, that as I transitioned to clinic ownership, that I need to be the best therapist, or I must be the senior physio. And our team has grown and thrived and flourished so much as I've accepted the fact that as I create champions out of my team, thus our team and our clinic grows and we're able to help more people. That's amazing. And you mentioned also, if we can pull on the thread of clinic growth, how do you grow a clinic the way you did so rapidly?
I'm building alliances. I think, that word alliance is actually such a pillar and a fundamental component to practice owners, clinicians as contractors or as employees, really building. People are going to refer to you if they like you. So you can market and market and market, but if there isn't something that they can connect with you on a personal level, then they're not going to refer to you. They're not. There'll be another physio or another clinician that comes in and sort of steal that spotlight. People are very much like, oh, shiny thing. Sure. And then chasing that. But if they like you, before I met you guys, I was sending you guys referrals. If they like you and they like what you stand for and they like the conversations that they're hearing, they're gonna work with you. There's just no doubt about it.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And so we continue this journey of clinic growth, and then your consulting continues to grow and helping other clinic owners.
Yes.
How did you end up in Australia then?
Yeah, good question. I did some volunteer work when I was 15, and I had met an Australian from Perth at that time. And by the time I was 26, I was really starting to contemplate life. Like when you're bullet trained through life and you try and push everything through, because things just kind of happen and you take advantage of them, or, whatever the reason is, you burn out. Which is, our topics here in terms of taking care of ourselves, but you burn out. And so here I was, 26, thinking, oh my God, I've done everything. I'd owned a house, 2 businesses. I was married, and everyone's like, oh, great, you're so successful. And I kind of sat back and I thought, yeah, well, working 24 hours a day. I'm constantly juggling, the stressors of 2 businesses and the family life. And at 26 and 27, people are wanting you to have babies. And, and I just thought, we'd been together, my partner and I'd been together for such a long time. It was kind of the next step. And I said, hold on, I'm making all of this money. I can't spend any of it because, I'd never flown, I'd never done anything. So I kind of had a quarter life crisis, my eat, pray, love moment. If anyone out there is an Eat, Pray, Love fan, my moment where she wakes up in bed and opens her eyes and she's like, I have actively participated in every part of my life that led me to right here, and that moment is just such a powerful moment. And you think, hold on, I have my entire life, we live once. How do we change so that we're living a life that we love? And I loved my practice and I loved my consulting firm, but really that personal component of it, people were telling me I was successful and those types of things. And so I contacted my friend. He found me on Facebook and he's like, you know what? Australia is just a flight away. I want to just say, anyone who's listening at home, it is not just a flight. From DC to Perth is the longest flight in the world. And you need to get on 3 planes. So
it's the other side of the world, almost exactly.
Yeah. So he lied. But then I came and I spent a month and I thought, you know what? The lifestyle here in Australia, the beaches are amazing. I went home and I decided I was going to take 6 months to make sure my business didn't rely on me at all so that I could leave it for a year. And that was my goal, was to come over here and travel through Australia for 1 year, maintain my business over home, and really just get the experience of the gap year that I didn't get, and just live, without being stressed. So I did that.
And you haven't left?
I haven't left. I met my partner 2 months before leaving Australia, and so I am here, I would say, for him. But yeah, no, it's beautiful. I love it. I absolutely love Australia. You guys are so lucky. We're all lucky to be here, actually. So.
Right. So true.
Yeah.
So in your travels, literally and metaphorically, through working with clinicians, owning your own clinic, and now consulting and helping clinic owners, can you speak to some of those elements around self-care? What do you see as maybe some of the mistakes clinic owners make, or opportunities that they could improve their self-care?
Yeah. Do you find, Jack, as you're doing two things as well, you're running a business, you're an owner at Clinic Mastery, and you've got children, your wife, you've got a family, you've got everything. How do you find time to juggle all of it? I don't have as much as you do. Well, how do you do it?
Oh, look, I don't think you find time as much as you make time.
Exactly. Right? That's exactly right.
And so it's priorities.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And I'm budgeting my time. Some people love to be spontaneous. I'd say I'm blessed to be fairly analytical and a melancholic type personality. And so, I budget my time down to the minute and prioritize what matters.
That's exactly right. And I've written, self-care comes down to planning. It isn't going to happen. It isn't, you're going to continue to move forward like the bullet train and the steam train and everything else going forward. But if you're not actively participating in your own self-care, then it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to care for you like you.
Right. That word active really resonates with me. Yeah. So I wonder, do you see a lot of clinic owners perhaps think I can just be a little bit more passive and put my feet up and hope that I'm refreshed and energized?
That's exactly it.
Does that work, or is that a myth?
Well, you know what? I think it does definitely depend on your personality. Meditation and mindful meditation is such a big thing in the psychology space. A lot of my clinicians use that as a modality to help their clients through. But in all honesty, if somebody tells me, and I've been to a temple and tried to meditate, and my girlfriend was like, let's go, this isn't working for me, because I just couldn't stay focused. But meditation doesn't work for me. But do you know what does work for me is rock climbing. I love trad climbing. Right. And so that in and of itself is active meditation. And so I think it does definitely depend on your personality. I read books, but sometimes when I'm reading, I'm still thinking about what I need to be doing for work. Or I posted something on LinkedIn the other day really about when you're required for part of your job to be on social media all of the time, when do you turn it off? Like if you're there for your personal time and if you're there for your professional time, your life just goes down rabbit holes of, we talked about this before, like ridiculous ads about double-sided sticky tape that can hold my computer to the wall, and dog videos of like really cute dog videos and just different things like that. And so self-care needs to be, this is what actually refills my cup. This is what replenishes me. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I think there's another element too. If there's chaos in all of everything in your personal life and your business life, you're not going to be able to be settled, even if you're actively trying to settle or passively trying to settle. So when you've structured your business in a way that you know exactly what's coming up, so planning, your business analytics and planning the structure of what needs to be happening with your business, so that when the day comes, you're not thinking, okay, right, I need to organize myself and I need some self-care. It's just juggling too many balls.
Sure.
But if you know exactly what you're doing for the next 3 months, then you can say, okay, well, I'm going to passively try and get some self-care because I know I've got a few down days, and I'll just see how that goes. But business planning is such an important component about actually getting some self-care. If your business is taken care of, you can leave your business for a year and travel Australia.
Right. I love that. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And it really does resonate. We often speak with clinic owners inside the Business Academy around holiday time, or what we would phrase as renewal time.
Yes.
And it has to be in your diary. If you're not prioritizing yourself, you're not going to be in a healthy enough place to be able to lead your team, which enables you to affect your community. And so making those holidays the first priority with
Yes.
your family or with yourself.
Yes.
And tell me, Tash, when it comes to self-care, are there non-negotiables, like in terms of we must be doing things like, sleeping or going on a health retreat, or is it those who are more active like yourself? You go rock climbing and adventure versus rest. Are there things that we should do, or is it just a matter of self-awareness?
I think it's self-awareness. I think the should is you should plan for it.
Right.
If any of your people are not planning for it, make sure that you really stress that they're planning for it. Like I'm right now working with my clients to say, what are you doing in 2020? And I'm not talking about business-wise. I'm talking about what holidays or what time off are you taking?
So good.
And we're going through and we're blocking out that time. And then if it comes up to that time and they don't need it, then they're not going to take it. They can do whatever they want with it. But if you're actively planning for the time, you can decide what floats your boat. Maybe you want to plan out, in detail what you're going to be doing for self-care. That would drive me insane. But
right. I love that. For me, like the itinerary creation is almost more exciting than the holiday itself.
Oh my God. No way. No way. Your partner, I hope your wife is like the opposite of that. Is she going to be the one who's like, all right, you plan for it?
No, it's like a spreadsheet session on the lounge. It's just not dashboards, it's itineraries.
I love it. You guys are like, okay, do you have your Wonder List open? I've got my Wonder List open. What are the to-dos we're going to do on our holiday? And we're going to hear at 8:05 and we're going to be here by 9:10.
And that's what we love, Someone challenged me and they're like, oh, you should be more spontaneous, or that's so rigid. Like, I don't care not that I don't care what you think, but I know what works for us.
That's right.
And we love that.
That's right. Well, that's all that matters.
You mentioned, you're working 24 hours a day and you missed the gap year and all those things, the pressures of being a clinic owner. Can we touch on resilience, and when is there a time to suck it up and go, I'm in this for the long haul and let's battle on? And how do you juggle that between sometimes the constant desire for self-care or self-desires? What is resilience?
I would say that you would need to have someone or a group of people really around you that when you're not able to take care of yourself, they can help you fill your cup. We talk about the mentors that are younger than you, or even a mentor that's older than you, or surrounding yourself with people who can understand your triggers so that it's not just that weight of the world on your shoulders. But, another aspect of the resilience is if you're working with a group of clinicians and administration team members who are supporting one another, you don't fall as deep. You don't fall as far and you don't need to then be as resilient because, you're protecting both yourself and your team members from hitting rock bottom or even falling toward rock bottom. And so when you're planning for your self-care time and you have the right supports around you, that resilience is a critical factor in knowing that, okay, well, I have some space to be vulnerable, to get back on my feet. But in all honesty, part of that is go see a psychologist.
Yeah.
Right?
It's something, and I think, although this seems such an obvious question, you don't have to have a mental illness to see a psych, right?
Oh my God. I started a campaign on Instagram called I See a Psychologist, and just trying to normalize, what that looks like. It doesn't have to be to the point where you're so depressed you can't get out of bed to brush your teeth. It's just having someone there who understands you and who you are as a person and the nuances that you have and what your triggers are, and going into therapy and being able to say, hey, this is who I am in this moment. And Jack, honestly, it's a lot more prevalent, the normalization of psychotherapy and therapy in America than it is here in Australia. And so I think that's another aspect, is that, people to say, oh, I've got to shrink on my books, or, I see my clinician, my psychotherapist on a weekly basis. No one's looking really at you going, okay, well, what's all that about? It's really just another support to be able to help you build the resilience, build your self-care, and focus on being human.
As I hear you talk, Tash, it seems to me like you're saying resilience is a structure that you build around you. It's not just the intestinal fortitude to be able to hold your breath for another day with cash flow. It's a building of a foundation of different structures and supports. Is that right?
Absolutely. Athletes, if you ask them what the most important component of training is going to be, it's recovery. It's definitely not, being able to run an extra 10 kilometers or training harder the next day that they're working out. It's really about what are they doing on their downtime so that when they get back to work, when they get back to training, they can train harder and longer and smarter. So it's that downtime that's really going to be important.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, we as clinic owners, we're leading a team so often that is our role, is to facilitate great experiences for our team that they can create great outcomes often. But I wonder if there's fatigue that kicks in as you lead 24/7, 365, that perhaps being part of a team or having a team around you of, like you said, a mentor, whether they're different or younger than you, and a therapist and a coach, and having these supports, family and friends and non-clinic related contacts.
Yes.
That is resilience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like if you've got a team of people who are willing to provide their knowledge to help each other grow, you don't have to then have everything in your toolkit. How exhausting would it be to, if a roofer was like, oh, I need to be thinking about the cement, and the foundation of the roof, plus the walls, plus the windows, plus I need to make sure the house is clean. So I'm going to carry everything on my back to fix the roof. It's way too much. So that's why construction teams have specialized team people around them. I don't know much about construction, but they have a team
the analogy
of people.
Stands. So if you were to talk to clinic owners, and I know that you run Private Practice Alliance, but for our listeners, if you could leave some parting nuggets, some golden wisdom, what would you share?
Well, I would take your advice, firstly, and make sure that they're planning some self-care stuff. That self-care renewal is so vital, and not just for yourself, but you need to have the right team members doing the same thing. So, if you've got that employee or that contractor that's working with you and they come in when they're sick and they work, extra long hours, and however you would take care of them, you need to be doing the same for yourself. So if you find yourself, it's been 7 days since you actually had a day where you said, you know what, I'm going to go and plan something, then take some time. What would you tell an employee or a contractor that was working so hard and you could see that it was crushing them? Be gentle on yourself.
Yeah, right. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And for those who are interested in checking out more of your journey or how you help clinic owners, where would you send them to?
Well, I'm always love the idea of leaning in. So find me on LinkedIn, Natasha Ace. That's the best place. And I think having, just even beautiful humans to share their brains with, I'd love the idea of that. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram as well. That's sort of a main platform for me. We're following each other, Jack. And so that's just going to Instagram, private_practice_alliance. So, yeah.
Awesome. And listeners can head to your website, privatepracticealliance.com, if they're looking for that. And if that is too much of a mouthful for you, perhaps while you're driving or on a treadmill or walking the dogs, wherever you're listening to this, listeners, we will link up Tash all over the interwebs on our website at the show notes for this episode. So it's clinicmastery.com/podcast. That is clinicmastery.com/podcast. Tash, it's been wonderful. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Listeners, we would love to hear what you think, so please feel free to head over to your podcast player of choice, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever that might be, and leave us a review and a rating of this episode. Just drop your 2 cents in. That would be super. And if you'd like to get in touch with me personally, you can do so, jack@clinicmastery.com. I'd love to hear what you thought about this episode and just hear from you guys. I get to speak down the pipes to you quite regularly, so please feel free to get in touch. I love it when listeners reach out. It floods my inbox, but in such a good way. Tash, thank you again for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And listeners, thank you for joining us. We look forward to bringing you another episode of the Grow Your Clinic podcast again really soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grow Your Clinic podcast. To find out more about past episodes or how we can help you, head to www.clinicmastery.com/podcast. And please remember to rate and review us on your podcast player of choice. See you on the next episode.